Child First Practice in the Salford Area Partnership. The work of a complex case officer.
Katie, one of the interesting aspects of Salford's work, and I've been privileged to see it grow from about, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when we first started talking, was your appreciation across the whole system of the complex needs of certain young people. It was absolutely clear 5 years ago, and now you seem to be growing practice in a direction which really does support young people with emerging, or if you like, sudden complex needs, to the point you've appointed within Salford a complex case officer, which I think is an amazing appointment. Could you tell me a little bit more about the genesis of it and how you work with that complex case officer within youth justice and emerging cases, please?
Yeah, of course. So within the local authority, the head of inclusion and head of the virtual head of schools, part of their widening of their staff base for the practice to try and capture a lot of our young people, like you say, with these emerging complex case issues, really, or you know, things that really needed some more support, more interest in looking at. Oh, I'm losing my thread now.
Oh, well, we'll start again. Start the whole bit again. Yeah, yeah.
Go. So, yeah, the wider local authority realised that there was a need to focus more on our young people, especially those that were struggling with additional needs and needed that additional support. So as we've moved forward, the head of inclusion has taken on additional staff in terms of, there's a complex case officer for inclusion. There's also now a complex case officer that specifically holds cases around child in need and looked after children. And between them, we have a monthly meeting with the youth justice cases, so we can specifically start to look at our young people who are either missing education or are on part-time timetables, or where our case managers are speaking to young people and they're saying, well, you know, they've not been in school for such a long time, or this has been missing, or we're really struggling, feel like we've had a couple of exclusions, fixed term exclusions, whether they're on the verge of maybe a permanent exclusion. And what the complex case officers are able to do then within our meeting is be able to help us with a more coordinated approach to that.
Right.
So there are two things we take forward, really. When we become aware of a young person that we really are concerned about their education, either the offer of their education or what they're actually taking up, we feel like they are our link to help bring a more coordinated approach, especially with the schools and the parents, carers and the young people, to be able to see, you know, what do the young people want, what do their parents and carers want, and actually how could we support schools to bolster the provision of offer that then means that we're trying to reduce the amount of fixed term exclusions, permanent exclusions, in-year managed moves. Yes. And that's hugely what that complex case officer is. Not only do both the complex case officers take on those cases and they really research into the history of the young person, what does their educational path look like, where are they at?
I suppose in that way as well,
coordinate any meetings that then need to take place, and extremely promptly. Between ourselves, we pull in education psychology into that, speech and language, CAMS, the nurse, and, you know, only if appropriate at that point, and then school, to be able to discuss what some support plans could go forward. Now, at that point, what we are calling that in Salford is a pre-education on track, because there is actually an education on track panel where all these service providers, including ourselves, sit together and look at that coordinated approach from the city to how we can support schools and young people to increase their chances with their education, really. But referrals to the actual Education on Track panel need to come from school or social worker if social worker is involved, and they need to come and present that case to the wider group with all that core member buy-in, which again is speech and language, educational psychology, nurse health, CAMS, ourselves, education inclusion, education welfare. And it's then about that wider approach. But from a youth justice perspective, we will have these discussions with these complex case officers, and we will refer in, and then they take that on their caseload as a pre-education on track. For us to have those meetings, see if we can't get some resolution. If there's no resolution to be had, they will then be escalated up to the wider meeting of the Education on Track.
I think what I'm really interested about this is that there is a visibility of these young people at the right level within the local authority. That's what I'm getting. You know, these cases are coming through with an evidence base, but then they are being quickly and efficiently handled. The case is being understood, and the right professionals are being involved at the right time.
Absolutely, and it is a really quick response. The complex case officers, I have to say, have been amazing and a huge support to particularly us at Youth Justice, so I can't see why they wouldn't have been such a welcome support around the local authority education arena. But for us, just because there are so many schools, there's so many staff, we've now got academies as well, and sometimes that landscape isn't as familiar to us because that is not what you know. It's a part and parcel of a wider picture for us, isn't it? So it's amazing to have that immediate link into somebody who really does have that knowledge and oversight and understanding of how the schools also work, that we can then put our concerns to, and then they help us with quite an immediate approach to what's happened. So for example, one of my case managers came back from a visit last week, and she said, I'm extremely concerned about this young person's education. He's due to start at a pupil referral unit literally tomorrow. I don't feel like school have got a good handle on what they're going to be expecting from this young person, and I feel like I could have quite a lot of input into what that's going to look like. I phoned the complex case officer. We had a professionals meeting between kind of 4 or 5 of us. We pulled the complex case officer from sin and lacking because the young person had until only recently just had a social worker. And the speech and language therapist joined us, and so did the CAMS worker from our place, because they're both involved at the moment with him because we felt he may have some unidentified needs.
Wow.
So we've had those assessments going on in the background. And then from that, 9 o'clock the following morning, we managed to get a meeting through the complex case officers with school, and we were able to share some of those concerns and just an oversight of the work that the officer from our place had been doing with the family, because we felt like that would give them some real insight into what to expect when that young person and his mum came for a meeting with the school, because they really didn't feel like they had I think it happened quite quickly and they didn't have a great deal of information, and we just feel it's so important for them as well, and for the young person to go somewhere where they feel like that information is, is shared.
Yes.
And hopefully that will help not set that young person up to fail in yet another placement, really.
Again, it's a beautifully managed transition, isn't it? Yeah. At a point where the child needs it most.
Yes, and the role of that complex case officer has evolved as well recently. She is now sitting every morning at the bridge, which is Salford's front door for referral. So she can actually be there at the point when some phone calls are being made about young people that is specifically either around their education or those concerns of welfare, or concerns around safeguarding for a young person is coming through. She's actually there to immediately pick up that young person's name and do some research into their educational position at that time and share that with the screeners on the bridge, in an effort to assist them in making some good decisions about what the next step might be.
And how's this resource being received by schools? I would have thought they were pretty positive about it, because I know how some schools can be a bit reactive towards it. In other words, you're interfering with our decisions about exclusion. I know that's the case in some areas, but this does seem to be quite a collaborative approach.
Yeah, I don't have any personal feedback from the schools. However, when we have been in meetings, schools to me have always seemed quite receptive of this whole, not just the complex case officers, but the education on track panel, because they feel that they're getting that wraparound approach, not just for the young person and the family, but for them as a school. And that's going to be progressed as we move forward, because Salford is looking at setting up a team around the school process, where that can be pulled together in even within the school, and not just kind of this from the outside in. But yes, schools in the Education on Track meeting have often seemed, because if you get to Education on Track, it's because you really have exhausted all your options. So at that point, as a school, to have that wraparound wider city approach with all those people around that table seems to be well received, because they really have internally within school tried everything that they maybe they could.
Yeah. Katie, thank you.